Our working group was struck by the district, and I'm not live yet for some reason. There we go. Our Neighbourhood Character Working Group was struck by District Council quite a while ago now. In fact, 18 months ago. We've been meeting every couple of weeks since September, and our purpose in life is to recommend changes to regulations and bylaws, basically, that will protect and enhance neighborhood character in West Vancouver. And one of the first things, of course, we have to do is determine what neighborhood character is, and it's sort of the result of all the things of presentations, buildings, groups, history, everything from the cabins that you just saw to all the houses that we currently live in, and all the neighborhoods. And of course, neighborhoods in West Vancouver, there are, in spite of being a pretty small organization, a pretty small district, we've got, depending on how you count, 22, 23, or 24 different neighborhoods that are specifically defined and named. None of which, of course, have borders, none of which have definitions, none of which have any real weight in terms of what they mean as a neighborhood. But we all know where Ambleside is, and we all know where Dunderave is, and we all know where Caulfield is, and there's another 20 beyond all of that. Our working group has been at work, as I said, for about 18 months now. And we have been meeting every couple of weeks, except during the pandemic, it turns out we've been meeting every week, I guess, because we don't have enough to do. The group consists of 9 citizens, and we have a really varied group, an extremely hardworking group of volunteers. We're supported by 2 staff. Our council representative is Peter Lambert, who pays double duty because he's also, of course, an architect and helps us understand some of the technology. We've been pretty busy. We've spent a lot of time talking to people, as well as bringing our own views of what neighborhood character is and what the problems are. We've done a very large study last spring, which we asked the public to validate what we had thought we identified the problems as. And we also had quite a large body of work that had been done in by previous groups, who apparently did a lot of work but really didn't get much traction and didn't actually solve what are perceived as the problems. The main things came down to people thought that buildings were too big in a lot of cases, houses were too big. Not very pleasant. Landscaping, we found, is a very important part of neighborhood character in West Vancouver. And many neighborhoods have their own specific landscaping design, I suppose. But in general, we're more green as a community than almost anything in the Lower Mainland, and I think that's important. And it's a very big part of our heritage and our character. And it's something that we want to protect and really improve in the future, and I'll talk about that a bit more. We wanted to encourage consideration of neighbors when people are developing new homes in any neighborhood. And we also found on our own basis, and also from the investigations that we had done, that housing diversity was something that was very important to people. That not just as an abstract concept, but because one of the things that really defines neighborhoods, and I can talk about that from my own experience, is the diversity of the families and the family types that are in the neighborhood. My wife and I moved into Dunderave about 10 years ago, and we have landed ourselves in a block where most of the people here have been here for 25 years, and their kids all grew up together. And the fact that the kids grew up together solidified the neighborhood and solidified the character, the personal part of the character in that. So it was really important that there's a range of housing diversity. And we're not thinking about housing styles here. We're thinking about types of houses, different price points, different sizes, things that will attract different kinds of different age groups, different families, and so on. So there's that diversity of groups of people that live within the neighborhood that actually defines, in a lot of cases, what the neighborhood really is. So anyway, we had a draft after about a year in 5 months or 4 months or so, we put a draft of our recommendations out for review just this past January. And then in the next couple of months, just before the COVID thing happened, we met with a number of stakeholder groups, which was staff, of course, of the district, which has to be able to work with the recommendations that we come up with council, because it has to be politically acceptable. Whatever recommendations we do, if they're not implemented by council and staff, they don't go anywhere. But we also talked to a lot of stakeholder groups, and those we talked to builders, realtors, architects, landscape designers, and we talked to the Heritage Committee, and we talked to the Design Review Committee of other volunteers that the district has put together. So we got a lot of feedback. We integrated all that feedback during the COVID period when we had more time to work on it, fortunately, and for us at least, and it really helped us to crystallize our thoughts. We ended up learning from the stakeholders that we talked to that they wanted even more emphasis on reducing the visible size of houses. They wanted more emphasis on the diversity that I touched on. In particular, they want suites and coach houses, and that's something we've spent in our recommendations a lot of time developing concepts for. And there was quite a bit of fine-tuning, things that we found out that we couldn't do legally, some things you can't control as a municipal government. There's logistical that may be just too expensive to do. It might be impractical, might step on people's rights and their own private properties and so on. So all of those things we took together, and we're now at the point where we have a new set of recommendations, or a refined set, I guess you'd call it, of recommendations that we will be releasing sometime, probably in about a month, when we figure out how to do it. Actually, we're working with council and with the Community Engagement Committee of council to determine how to best get our recommendations out to the public for further comment, and to tell them what we've been doing for the last 18 months. The result is that we've got a lot of small changes, and it's a very long list of recommendations. There's probably 30 or 35 recommendations, many of which are small. There's a couple of big ones, but a lot of small things that we think will collectively drive a real positive change in the physical appearance of neighborhoods, and also the population in those neighborhoods over time. So just briefly, I'll run through the recommendations that we've got at a really high level here. We wanted to, in general, encourage smaller homes and smaller lots. So to do that, we were proposing some reductions in the floor area ratios and floor area ratio exemptions. Some slight changes there that are actually compensated for in another way, but it will result in smaller appearing houses. And we also want to make it easier to subdivide large lots. West Van is an interesting area that has developed over a very long time. And some of the lots are quite large, but they're not quite large enough to subdivide, although it would make more sense from a character point of view to have perhaps a couple of smaller homes on those lots instead of one giant one, which is permitted now. So in a lot of cases, if we can make it easier to subdivide, we'll end up with the smaller houses that people are looking for. And then to offset that reduction in the floor area ratios, we are in a floor area ratio, for anybody who's, if you haven't quite got your head around that, it's the ratio of the size of your house compared to the size of the lot. So typically in North or West Vancouver, we can have a 0.35. So if you've got a 10,000 square foot lot, for example, you can build a 3,500 square foot house. And of course, first reaction is going to be, well, people are building a lot bigger houses than that, and of course they are. It turns out there's quite a few exemptions. The basements are exempt, the garages and so on are exempt. So there's a lot of ways to get a lot more floor area on your lot than would appear at first glance. So we tried to tighten up some of those exemptions and reduce the floor area ratio slightly. And to offset that, we have proposed a density bonus that if you build a suite or if you build a coach house on your lot, you get a bonus square footage that would put you back up to at least the same size as now, or maybe larger. But the result would be, for example, if you build a coach house with your new larger bonus on your square footage, you could have a smaller main house with a house behind it, and you still have this detached feeling to the neighborhood, detached houses, rather than overbuilding, and smaller houses in general. And we also want an easier, predictable process for if you're going to build suites or if you're going to add coach houses. The whole idea here is to do all this to reduce the size of the main house, to increase the number of coach houses, and consequently the diversity of population and the neighborhood character that comes with that. And at the in the overall scheme of things, though, we want to maintain this look of detached houses and single-family type houses while we live through the inevitable growth and change that's going to happen in the neighborhood. One of the things that's happened, of course, in West Van more than in most places, is that the property values have changed so much that people are really concerned about what they can build here, and they really want to get their top dollar out. So we want to not limit that, but we want to encourage smaller houses in the process. So there's a bit of conflicting goals here, and we think that we've struck a balance by encouraging smaller houses and absolutely encouraging the coach houses and suites to happen. We've also made quite a few recommendations that will make houses look smaller even though they're not. So for example, because we're on such a slopey side of a mountain here, a lot of houses look like they're 3 stories even when they're not. So we'd like to encourage people to kind of shield that basement level if it's a 3rd story, so that it doesn't look like an overpowering house. There's also a ton of minor changes to the bylaws for highest building face and roof heights and so on. There are kind of a lot of technical stuff. And this is an interesting conundrum that we've had with the Neighbourhood Character Working Group, is kind of, on the one hand, we all know that character is this ethereal, feel-good, what do the houses look like, what's it feel like when you walk down the street, but what levers does the district have to actually control anything like that? Well, it's pretty limited, and it's very technical, and it comes down to bylaws for roof heights and highest building faces and articulation and things like that. So there's quite a bit of rules or recommendations fall into that category. But together, we think that they will make a difference in how the street feels when you walk down it. We also want to encourage a lot more green landscaping and less hardscaping by limiting hard surfaces that are visible from the street a little bit more. And this is a big thing, as we really want to pay a lot more attention to the boulevards. West Van is kind of a split personality, I suppose, on how we deal with boulevards. On the one hand, it's up to the individual homeowners to maintain them, but there's a lot of limitations on what you can do based on what the district will permit, and of course the district doesn't want to spend any money to actually maintain them themselves. So we've got some quite a number of recommendations that will, we think, help people know how to tie the boulevard into their property, and also, more importantly, perhaps tie it into the boulevards going down the street, so that we get this continuity of feel, of character as you go down the street. And another big one is we want to encourage more consideration and communication with neighbors. Right now, often a neighbor doesn't know that there's a new home going up next to them until after the sign goes up. And by that point, the developer or the owner of that new build is pretty heavily invested in it. They've got a lot of time, 6 months maybe in the district. They've got their architectural plans all down. They've got their permits in place. Their builder all lined up. They're ready to go. When the neighbor says, gee, it would have been so much easier for me if you'd just moved that 4 feet over here, if you changed your one window so it doesn't overlook me, would have appreciated that. There's no opportunity for that kind of communication now, and we'd like to encourage that. And we have a couple of recommendations that will help that along as well. So in general, that's it. We'd like to help people build smaller and smaller appearing houses at the same time as they use that extra floor area ratio or buildable area on their lot for things that will strengthen the community and in the form of coach houses and suites. And we want to make and continue to have West Van be the green gem of the Lower Mainland, and even more so than we can. So behind all this, the OCP, the official community plan for West Vancouver, does say that We should continually review regulations and control the scale of new single-family dwellings, and we're doing that. We should update the guidelines regard to neighbor context and character and streetscape and natural features, and our recommendations do that. Further on the OCP, there's this thing that from Metro Vancouver, which ties in all the district municipalities in the Lower Mainland to encourage the diverse range of housing options that obviously respect neighborhood character. So these are really important things that have been in the OCP and in the Metro strategies for quite a long time. And we think that we're maybe finally getting around to making some recommendations that are going to actually see action from these good high-level guidelines that really haven't been put to work before. One of the things we would like to do is add a change to the OCP that requires development permit applications and rezoning applications to include a section that demonstrates how this project is going to respect or enhance neighborhood character, so that right from the beginning, the owner developer and their designers, their architects should be thinking about this and how they're going to present this to council and to staff to say, yes, we're going to do this nice new building here, and not only it's a wonderful building, but this is how it is going to either respect the existing neighborhood character or enhance it as that neighborhood character evolves over time. So it's something that will be built into the design process right from the beginning and will be communicated about on a much more open basis. So that's the nub of my presentation. We wanted to just kind of send a teaser out with this. Hopefully in the next month or certainly 2 months, we will be out with the full recommendation package. It'll be online. We'll probably have a survey. And I'm sure we're trying to find ways that we can do public meetings and get it out there. But the recommendations are by a really dedicated group of citizens of West Vancouver who have really put their minds to this and their shoulder to the wheel, I guess you'd say, and built on all of the previous work that had been done for it, so that we can hopefully develop the district in a way that makes the citizens proud and makes us happy and makes our future a really good one here. So thanks very much.